Hopefulness 2.0, April 28th. I'm a sleepyhead. I don't know how well I'm going to do this whole thing with, like, went to bed at 1 and, like, it was so comfy I didn't want to get out of bed. It's chilly, too. It's like 60 something today, and it's not going to get any cold. It's not going to get any warmer. It's going to be like 65. This is going to be cloudy and stuff. I'm going to make these pork tacos later. I have to clean stuff first. Because I made, something of a mess making some banana bread. I already had my banana bread for today. You know what? Great. Hurry. Where you at? Come on. Where'd you go? There we are. Ta-da! It's cold enough, so why not? But, so yesterday, man, I spent a good chunk of yesterday reading fucking paperwork. It kills me to do it. So much of it, too. Like, there was one that was like some 15 or close to 20, I don't know. It's like anywhere between 15 and 20 pages. And it's just like a long legal document, basically. And then there's other forms of legal documents, and some of which I can't even actually access because when I click on them, they don't load. So I have to send an email, let them know, hey, I can't read these specific ones. I need, another source. I mean, I get it. It's like you're working in a healthcare facility, essentially. And I'll be working as, I'm be working as effectively a kind of healthcare position. It's more clerical than anything else, but certain levels of confidentiality. There's one document that's HIPAA related, but I can't actually read it yet because it's one of the documents that won't load. So, I've got to read that. I mean, it's like I'm trying to take a class and I'm trying to read the book. And there's a lot to it. I mean, there was a big, there was one, it was like 3 pages, and it was broken down pretty reasonably, so it wasn't really 3 whole pages. It was more like a page and a half, the way that it was formatted and everything, but it was talking about social media, and, you don't want to talk shit about them and all that kind of stuff. And, I mean, don't be a jackass on social media. It makes sense. But, yeah, the one document, there's a lot of dealing with like ethics and some of those, I can't remember the name of it. It escapes me at the moment. But yeah, it took me all day to read that damn thing. Because like I can't sit down and read a document like that for any extended period of time. It just breaks my brain. I mean, reading a book that I like, I can barely do anymore. And like, yeah, it's rough. And it doesn't help that I have other distractions, making food, and in order to keep myself sane, I was playing a little bit of EverQuest in the background. Not doing anything kind of crazy or anything, but still, it's just like, gotta make food, I gotta take a dump every now and then, stuff like that. That's why, like, for me, working from home would be catastrophic. Like, it would not be productive for me to be at home while working. Unless, like, whatever I was doing had a lot of regular input from others. And I don't mean, like, micromanaging and shit like that. It's just regular sort of back and forth communications and stuff. Be it answering phones or whatever, that'd be fine too. But yeah, if it was just like data entry or, you know, reading documents, etc., no, that would kill me. Environment really does have an impact on the way that I approach things. And so it's like, yeah. Like one of the things that I used to do would go to a library or I'd go to PCC library, for instance, Pasadena City College Library. And like that's where I did all the onboarding for when I worked at iHeart. I went downstairs and I did all the work. But I mean, it still took me like 8 hours to do all of it. And I don't know how much it was, but it wasn't like a ton. But, you know, that place allowed me to do it. Granted, I had my laptop with me, and so, you know, I had that distraction. But, like, for me, it's necessary to have something of a distraction to be able to break away from a screen with documents. Unless, again, like, so, okay, like, a physical book is easier for me to read than the same exact book on a screen. The reason why is because through the actual physical existence of the book, that is an additional stimulation for me that allows me to be interactive with it. When that piece is gone, it's harder for it's basically less there. And so it's easier for me to just kind of like fade off into the side or something and just kind of like, you know, and I daydream all the time, you know, I always lose focus as it is. But see, at least with a book, like sometimes I can be reading something and I'll be like, what the hell's back here? You know, what else is in this book? That's the kind of thing that I can do with a physical book. You know, when it comes to a book that isn't, you know, a story or anything like that, but if it's effectively, you know, some kind of instruction manual, whatever, if it's something like that, you know, it's like with the, where's it again? Where did I put it in a box. Good. I gotta figure out where the hell well, it doesn't matter. But I mean, let's just take these HelloFresh recipes, for example. You know, I'll be sitting here looking at, okay, what do I got here? Blah, 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 what kind of stuff do I have in the package? Okay, cool. What else is in here? You know, it's stuff like that. It's like, it's the ability, even though I didn't sit there and turn around and read the instructions on how to make it, I'm like, okay, so we have these things in here, that's cool. Then we'll switch over here. Oh, well, we got some flour and some sour cream, and there's a lemon and some chicken cutlets. Okay, cool. And then there's yellow onion, and then there's lime, and so on, blah, 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 blah. And so it's like having the physical, even if I'm not going through it, yellow onion, lime, long green pepper, orange, cilantro, which will not be entering my system. Fucking fruit flies. Because, you know, bananas. And probably also a little bit of that. I don't know. But, you know, it's like, I'm not going through everything, documenting, blah, 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 but you have to when it comes to certain types of documents and stuff. And so that, it breaks my brain. That makes it hard. Now, if, let's say, I was sitting there talking to somebody and acquiring information from them and bullshitting a little bit here and there, you know, filling, you know, it's easier to do something like that. Doing it by myself sucks. That's why I didn't like doing the radio stuff by myself. You know, that was difficult. And it was not, it wasn't that it wasn't, it's not that it was, it wasn't enjoyable. That's part of it. But it's soul sucking. It's like trying to, like, this is different because I'm also not trying to follow a format or anything like that. If I was trying to do this like I was trying to do the radio show, this would also kill me. Because this is just like a diary, effectively. Now, if I had, a co-host or two, it's like when I was doing my own radio show, and I had my co-host, and then I had a board operator. Like, those were people we could have interact in some way or another. Board operator occasionally. I when I first went into it, I was trying to. I was approaching it wrong. When I first went into radio at the school, I was doing my own show. And this wasn't like against anybody for a position or anything like that. It was because I wanted a specific thematic nature to it, which was just the hosts were the ones talking kind of thing. Because there's an air of performance to that. I know now that times have changed. People like the behind the scenes people talking too. And it also makes sense because often the people who are behind the scenes are very much like the people who are at the forefront. It's not that they don't want to be at the forefront. It's that often their preference is not at the forefront, but they don't mind being at the forefront. And having input from them, having input from your board operators or from, camera people, whatever. It's like when I watch Claire's Dessert Person and her crew talks on camera. It's like 20 years ago, that would have been so taboo, and it would have been like totally against the concept of what TV and a recipe show is and everything. But our societal understanding of things have changed, and in doing so, it has given us a better appreciation of the people who are behind the camera, because we've humanized them, because they have their personalities, because they have a voice, literal and figurative. And so you get to see not only like the input that they might provide, elements of how things are constructed. It's kind of stripping away the facade a bit, while still maintaining much of what the facade was. And that's a good thing, and that's, I would say, largely in part due to the nature of YouTube being what it has been. I'm not saying that YouTube itself, or as an entity, or as a corporation or anything, but just the concept of user-submitted content. And YouTube just happened to be the most successful platform for that to happen. And so that's why, like, kids growing up saying, I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be a Twitch streamer, et cetera now. You're stripping away some of that pretense. You're pulling that camera back a little bit further to see what's really going on. Not everything is nice and pretty and pristine. It's messy, and it makes it real. There's still some production value and all that other stuff that goes on into it, and there's all sorts of stuff that you still don't see. You're not sitting there, you're not part of the writing process. You're not part of the structure and editing and all that other stuff. You're not watching all of that going down. And so there's still a whole lot that hasn't been stripped away. But we're, and when you have shows like, Modern Family and The Office and the like, where you have people, the Parks and Rec and whatnot, where you have this feels like live television or rather feels almost documentary-esque sensation of television, where they break the fourth wall more. And that, again, helps to sort of strip away some of the facade. But there's still a lot there. You know, I don't know. There's, from Claire's dessert person, there is technically 4 people. But for all I know, there's like 12. I don't know. Obviously, you know, she's working in the confines of the book for the most part, which means, you know, there's the photographers, there's decorators, there's prop people. You know, she hired all kinds of people to help with that book so that you can have the look that you have. And, you know, there's food stylists and all that stuff. And those people, you know, they're kind of like unsung heroes in a lot of ways because they're not on camera. They're out doing whatever they're doing. And, you know, it's like, who's the editor of the show? You know, they're, you know, as far as I know, it may be the same person who's running the main camera. Probably not. But if I paid more attention, I'd be able to know. But I just haven't paid enough attention. And that's kind of like the thing about it, is that while we as an audience are getting a little of that behind the scenes, we're still not getting the whole behind the scenes. Because there's a lot. But it's nice that we have a little bit of the behind the scenes thing. And that's a more common thing now when it comes to transitioning away from traditional media formats. When you have effectively a blooper that's portrayed live in some capacity, as long as it doesn't, you know, violate any rules or laws or anything like that. You know, it's stuff like that where, because like, that's what I grew up with, that mentality of, and I mean, even like Lady Gaga, for instance, she was all about that veneer, the superstar veneer, not letting you see the behind the scenes type stuff. So like whenever she would do costume changes, or if she ever needed a drink of water, she would never do it in line of sight. And that's kind of what I grew up understanding the world of entertainment to be. And that's not the only thing you can do. Obviously, there's plenty more that you can do. And with the advent of user-provided content, you have new ways of approaching stuff. You have your jump cuts being a big thing now. You still have, even with jump cuts though, you still have some of the same concepts that you've had before, where you have B-roll, which is content that is there specifically to be shot so that there can be underlying voiceover, essentially. It's like we're using this to either illustrate what it was what we're talking about, or simply to create more atmosphere or whatever. It all depends on how you want to. It all depends on how you wish to create the video that you are creating. What is the vision that you are trying to adapt? And how do you want to utilize this content? You know, Joshua Weissman, he has a reasonable amount of B-roll, but then at the very end, they just tack on a bunch of B-roll. And like, he even makes it all sound sexy and shit. And it's funny as hell when he does it. But you know what else is salty and sweet? B-roll. You know, it's shit like that. And then you have this little brief montage. It's like 30 seconds of all these cool, usually slow-mo shots of, you know, pouring or lighting something or cooking or whatever it may be. And you might be saying, okay, well, why isn't that stuff inside the video? Because a lot of times the B-roll that you shoot doesn't fit. But what he's done is, he's like, well, let's not waste the footage. The footage looks good. Let's just tack it all together and throw some music under it, and it'll be good, you know? And it works. And then, you know, look at Ethan Chabowski. He's like, it's him and his brother. Those are the only two people who are working on that show. And he writes scripts for this stuff. And that's the thing. You generally have to write a script. You have to break down an outline of how things are going to be done, what's going to be said. You may not have to have precisely what you're going to say to then memorize it, but it's a good idea to have a really solid fundamental understanding of what's being said, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. Because if you break it down in that order, not only is it easier for you to remember, but it's easier for you to elaborate on if necessary. If you just go into it free form like this, you don't know where you're going. It's not structured, and so thus it is not easy to follow. And depending on what kind of content you're providing, and since I'm talking about cooking stuff, you won't be able to follow stuff. You won't be able to follow the directions that you've provided. So having a script, i.e. recipe, for your video is necessary. This is basically just a journal. And so the kind of content you're creating determines how it needs to be structured. Ethan Chabowski, he has to structure his a certain way too, because of course he's still cooking. But you're not going to get a lot of that flair that Josh Weissman does, because he has, you know, a crew of like 4 or 5 people at least. And with his, it seems, with Josh's, his seems a little bit more freeform and chaotic, but it's not. That is the personality, that is the style that they have produced. It very much is who they are, from what I can tell, based on, you know, the people that are involved in the production and everything. And so that's probably one of the reasons why it looks that way. But like, Ethan's is almost like an essay, which makes sense because it's effectively one dude writing the whole damn thing out. You know, you don't have, like, he's almost never funny in his videos, which is fine. It's not necessary to be funny in a video. Ethan is more about educating, breaking down concepts, discovery. Like, I would say that's probably the biggest thing for Ethan, is that discovery is the thing that he cares more about when it comes to the nature of food, and he wants you to have the same experience. And so he's creating a sense of discovery through his videos. And I think that's really important, that, because I mean, one, that helps set him aside from other people. But through discovery, in order for someone to feel a certain sense of discovery, there has to be an element of education, there has to be an element of unknown. And, you know, that's part of the thing about it too, is like, his sense of discovery, he is putting it into his videos. His lack of knowledge from the beginning, and then what he understands at the end, and how he got from point A to point B, is how you also discover what he discovered. And that's a talent. That is a talent. They are all very talented in their own ways. Adam Ragusa, he just released a video of thick burgers, you know, and how to do them at home, either on the grill or inside on like a, you know, a cast iron pan or something. And he's talking about how, like, why you shouldn't need these things because of the way that and so he's instructing it like he's a teacher, but he's not a food teacher. He's a teacher that's approaching food. I mean, he was a teacher before, and that's why. And, you know, he's a journalist, and so he utilizes not only his journalism skills, but also his connections to then create Monday videos that are more educational, you know, whether it be history related or what have you. Last 2 videos have been about pasta, and fascinating info. The guy he's been talking to is one of those guys who feels like he's checked out. And so I'm glad that Adam has, like, it pushed himself into the forefront more so in those videos. Some of the people he talks to, they're really fascinating, so he lets them go. And if you're just watching it and just not really knowing, I mean, you kind of can tell in some cases. But if you're not thinking about it, in a production standpoint, well, that's a good thing because he's doing his job right. Adam is. Because a good video production, all the other stuff, the writing, the editing, shot compositions, and all that other stuff, they are effectively invisible. They do not stand out because they're done well. Now, of course, it all depends on how you want to go. Occasionally, he does a pulling focus where he's like, I have a wider shot, and then he, pulls in, and then you get, a shallow depth of field shot that's closer up. And it's done for a specific effect or to showcase a certain effect. But most of the time, Adam's stuff, he has a relatively shallow depth of field. He's the one that's in focus. Oftentimes, his background is usually a little on the blurrier side, which is what you want. And then when he comes to his closer shots, most of the time, the entirety of the shot is in focus because that's kind of what you want when it comes to food. Unless there's a specific thing you're looking for that you want to highlight. On his cast iron pizza video that I use for my cast iron pizzas, he's talking about how there's a specific sort of crust thing that goes around the edge. And it's because of he's figured out that, and he does a lot of reverse engineering, which is through his own intellect and his own genius in my mind. I'm gonna fart. There we go. So he showcases he shows you pretty much the whole pizza, but then he pulls in and he shows you like this crusty edge where that's really the focus. But that's the intent of that shot, coupled with his voiceover, and he scripts the shit out of his show. Everything is scripted. Like everything he has said, and he said it in a previous video too. Like if it's in the final product, that's what he wrote down in his script, basically, and which is why his captions are almost like 100% because he's basically just importing his fucking script into the captions. He's a one-man operation. He's the only one who shoots. He's the only one who edits. He's the only one who narrates. He's the only one who does all of that work. And if you notice, like, this was kind of an accident, but, like, I went from a crew like Claire's and Josh Weissman's, small crews of, like, 4 or 5 people, and then I went to Ethan Jabowski, it's a 2-man crew, Adam Ragucci, a 1-man crew. Then you go to Babish, who is, kind of like a multi-crew, because they're creating their little culinary universe. But if you think of just Babish's show, it's still more than just Babish and the camera person and the editor, because, well, he has 2 camera people typically. He has his fiance, if not his wife now, his best friend, and I can't remember, I think it's Brad. Yeah. And then Sawyer is, I believe, his editor, / sound guy. And, then Babish goes in and he does the voiceover stuff on top of that. But then it's not just that either. It's like, he also has Kendall, who is his producer, basically, but she's also the one who does, like, all the mise en place type stuff. She does a lot of prep. And as I understand, they've just recently added on another person to the crew, but like with Babish, the binging with Babish episodes are largely closer to what my original thought was, and sort of in that area of Lady Gaga, where it's like, let's not show the behind the scenes stuff, let's just show what needs to be shown. But because of the nature of everything, it's loosened up more, and you get more personality out of it. And even though they're not necessarily scripting everything that's on camera, again, you're still breaking it down. You're creating an outline. You're still creating some sense of structure so that you can follow that later. And so that other people can then follow it. And those things are really important when it comes to that kind of video. And I mean, if you're watching a video that's critiquing something, you know, they're going to be doing the same thing. They're going to have a script. And you're not going to watch the script writing process. But that can actually be really fascinating depending on who the person is and some of the other factors. I mean, look at, go back to Ethan. When he's in Paris right now, I think he might still be in Paris. He may have moved on. I know he's doing this whole travel blog type thing. But at one point he kind of documented the day in the life. And at one point he was just like, he had a camera sitting next to him while he was editing and, you know, his script and whatnot. And it's like, but it wasn't live time capture. It was, it was a time lapse because like it can be boring on its own. But if you have a time lapse of it, then you can cut it down, you can trim it to, a reasonable size or whatever, and just it kind of be there as flavor. I don't remember why I went all that way down that hole. I really don't. I just have to clean some dishes and stuff and do some more paperwork. And I almost finished with my water. I already had my breakfast. I just had the medication. I'm gonna do these tacos. I gotta clean stuff. But yeah, so I don't know. I really don't know what I was thinking of, why I was talking about all that stuff. And at this point, I gotta take shit, so have fun.